cause the problem, offer the solution, when it's all really one body. But I also happen to notice that there is a rose and a cross. And it is said that the most secret symbols of the Masonic order come from the Rosicrucians. But there were other anomalies on this guide stone. I happen to notice that certain areas of it remained rough, while others were polished smooth. And I thought perhaps maybe this was a tuning of the stone to a particular frequency, much like the inner chamber, or what we call the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, has what they consider relieving stones. But it has been found that these relieving stones also have rough and smooth areas, and that they have been tuned to particular frequencies or tones, just like you would tighten a guitar string. But these stones are connected to channels, which go to star clusters that I find very interesting, especially that of Sirius and Alpha Draconis, but also Orion and Ursa Minor. Now, the pyramid sitting out in front of the Louvre just happens to be coated with 666 panes of glass. But could it be that these are not simple monuments, but actually devices, engineered geomancy or earth magic, that they're here to actually emit a particular frequency? So as I entered Tennessee, I happened to notice, well, how could you miss it? A large pyramid sitting off next to the Mississippi River. Now once again, this is a sports arena where they keep everybody in their basest human nature. I think that there's more to these pyramids than meets the eye. Now, the word for pharaoh and president could be interrelated. And what we find is the pharaonic men believed that they were descendant of the gods, that they were an interbreeding of the gods and man. And the word president actually means first man. And this particular god-man that stands in front of the Memphis pyramid just happens to be Ramses the Great, which just also happens to be W's relative. So now we see these Egyptian adornments all over our nation. This one's in Jackson, Mississippi, and well, you must realize that this is phallus worship, and that the power of the big red one does not mean a single unity, but a penis. And this penis is always connected with the goddess. So if you haven't figured out by now that Walt Disney is bad for your psyche, well, you're not paying attention. So what you'll notice is that Walt Disney Co. is actually a military-industrial corporation that seems to be crafting mind control slaves. You'll see here Walt Disney giving the right angle arm of the sign of the square of the Freemasons, just as Alan Moore is giving that same symbol. Now these are all equated. Walt Disney was a high-level Freemason that was hired by J. Edgar Hoover, who was a 33rd degree Mason, to instill thought patterns into the children. So when Madonna came down in her worshipful master's suit, wearing her top hat with the two Mouseketeers, Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, I knew we were looking at a high-profile ritual. But it was actually when Madonna placed the hat upon Britney Spears that she passed her Madonna-ship onto Britney Spears, to the song, of course, of Hollywood. And there is that symbol of death and resurrection again. So out in front of the Jackson, Mississippi Capitol, I found the goddess placing the wreath upon another goddess's head, passing the generation down, and then always a dead soldier equated with this goddess. Even at the Temple of Athena, the Parthenon in Nashville, I found this same symbolism encoded. Up in the facade of this structure, you'll see there is a Nike, or an angel, Victory, placing the wreath upon, well, the spear shaker Athena's head. And just up the street from the temple to Athena just happens to be the Temple of Mars. And we're back to the hermaphroditic symbols. Now, of course, this Mars is also holding a Nike up in his hand, and she's carrying 2 rings. And of course, Mars is the god of war, and this is a war memorial we're looking at. Now, the letter H in the tarot is the letter of the emperor, and it has a meaning. It means window. So, as we looked into this picture, I started to find all these Mars connections, and if you realize that Windows XP, the XP is the symbol of the Chi Rho, and Chi Rho is the modern name for El Calhir, which actually is Mars. Chi Rho means Mars. So window XP actually means Emperor of Mars. Whereas the same symbolism is shown in the History Channel logo, which is a red square. The square being a symbol of man, red being a symbol of Mars, the H being the emperor. Could it be that these men are the emperors of Mars? Well, certainly the Prometheus Mars mission shows Sumerian architecture on Mars, and there has been pyramids shown. And up on the temple to Mars, I found these fasces, and this is the symbol of fascism. This is on a Freemasonic, government-sponsored monument. We have fascist symbols. It wasn't simply on the Temple of Mars, but also on this goddess temple, which is the War Memorial in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, what we find is, of course, once again, it's dedicated to the men who are sacrificed in these Illuminati rituals and adorned with each of the goddesses. Now, it says, "Peace shall come to those who strive for peace." Now, do you think all of these implements of destruction, these guns and these wars, and I mean, the Russians just came up with a new bomb that surpasses the nuke. Do you think we're striving for peace here? And why is it the goddess is always shown with the dead men and the symbol of the fasces, or the fascist symbol? It wasn't just there, but it was on the door as well. This thing was covered in fascism. So what we'll find is that fascism should be more particularly or more properly stated as corporatism. And if you check my website at freemantv.com, you will find that each of the corporate logos can actually be identified by rituals or aspects of the Masonic ritual. All of them. Almost, I mean, all the top corporate logos. And so corporatism, we are grown up in a fascist state, a corporate state. And America has always been a fascist state. Any of you that think differently haven't looked deep enough, or you haven't gotten past your mind pattern programming. So what is it with these godmen and their lineage? We find that they interbreed, that they constantly want to keep this particular DNA going, straight down from the godmen to the presidents. As I mentioned, George Bush is a direct descendant of Ramses II. But not only that, he just happens to be the grandson of Aleister Crowley. Now, if you want the whole story, once again, go to freemantv.com, but just have a look, a picture here. If you tell me that Barbara Bush is not the daughter of Aleister Crowley, then, well, I say once again, you must be a little blind. Have a look at these faces and tell me it's not true. So realize that our president is the grandson of what was known as the 666, the beast, the wickedest man in the world. And this might explain why Aleister Crowley's handwritten works are kept on the UT campus. Well, I figured if we're looking at this dark secret, I better go talk to a Satanist and see what he thought about all of this. And so I met up with Rex Church, a high priest of the Church of Satan. I met him at a conference in Portland, Oregon, that I was giving a talk at. Well, as synchronicity would have it, it just turned out that he also was in my speech and in my presentation. And he thanked me later because he was talking about, well, geomancy. And so I thought perhaps he could tell us more.
There's certainly something to be said about how the physical image affects people that see it. That's the nature of propaganda.